Hey guys, and welcome to this video in the Data and Statistics series. This video is all about standard deviation. Standard deviation is just another one of the tools that we have to help analyze data. It is about the spread of the data and can be used in conjunction with the range and the interquartile range. But tends to be based off of the mean. So when we talk about standard deviation, we're actually talking about how far away from the mean our data or our particular score is. Okay, so it is a measurement. It is a measurement. Okay, of how far away from the mean a particular score is. That's the gist of standard deviation. It talks about how far away from the mean. So one of the easiest examples to use, probably not the greatest, but definitely the easiest example is IQ. The mean for the IQ test, or the average result in an IQ test, is 100. That is the average score. Standard deviation in IQ tests tend to range about 15 points. So if you got more than 115 or less than 85, you are more than one standard deviation from the mean. 130 is 2 standard deviations, and 70 is 2 standard deviations below. So we're talking about how far away from the mean is. Now in a previous video we looked at some symbols. This symbol for standard deviation the symbol for standard deviation is the lowercase sigma. Okay, so it's the lowest case sigma. Now the uppercase sigma is the big E looking thing. The lowercase sigma is a little bit harder to draw, but it essentially looks like that. Okay, and it talks about how far away from the mean we are. So that is standard deviation in a nutshell. Okay, we can go further into it, so we can have a population standard deviation and we can have sample standard deviation. We're not going to go into that in any depth at the moment. We're just going to stick with basic population standard deviation. Now, our calculators can do this calculation for us, and a little bit later I will show you what the by hand calculation is. We don't want to be doing it that way. We want to do it by the calculator. So let's head on up. Now you can see there we have the image at the top of your screen there. Alright, so this is entered data. Okay, so there's our entered data. Here, right, we've gone to the stat functions. So if you remember, to get into the stat functions after we've entered the data and pressed AC, we use shift 1 to get to those functions. Alright, then we use the option 4. option 4. Option 4 gets us to some of our important measures, right? So here is our standard deviation. Alright, so for the data that I had entered previously, this becomes my standard deviation. And you can see here, there's our little sigma x for standard deviation. When we do some examples or an example, we will show you just how to find that in a small data set, and then we'll look at what to do with it in a big data set. So down the bottom there where it says what is the calculator doing, let's go through and see what the algebra is that the calculator is actually performing. So there's a few steps along the way, okay? Step 1 is it will find the mean. Alright, so again, we need the mean so that we can find how far away scores are from the mean. Pretty straightforward, remembering that there's our symbol for mean, and that mean is the average. Okay. Step 2, the calculator is then going to find the difference between each of the values or each score and the mean. Alright, and now this is the bit that is the deviation. So the calculator is going to find what we call the deviation. And the deviation is the difference between each value and the mean. Okay, so we're finding the deviation. The next one is a pretty random sort of step, but it is important, is we square each deviation. We square the deviations. We find the sum of these squares. Alright, so that's the next step. So you can already see there's a lot going on. Sum of the squares. Number 5 is divide by the number of values or scores. Alright, and then once we've done that, take the square root of the value of dividing those number of values, right? So this comes out to be a quite complicated and convoluted formula that, yes, I will show you, but no, we won't use. Okay, so there's our little poorly drawn sigma. Alright, I'll draw the start of my square root sign, but I won't draw the rest of it in because otherwise I'll have to add to it, and it's just going to be crazy. Alright, remembering that x represents each score. So we have the first score minus the mean, and we have to square it. Then we have to add because we're doing the sum. The second score minus the mean, And again, we're squaring it. Now, this could go on for however many scores you have. So those 3 dots are representing all the scores in the middle. And then whichever number score you land on or you have there for how many scores there are, that's what that little n means. So x of, the nth x is the best way to say it. The nth x is that last one. And again, we square it. We put it all over the number of scores, and then we find that square root. That is a fairly convoluted formula. Not particularly time sensitive, that formula. So we're probably not going to be using it very often unless a question specifically asks for it, which is why you need to see it. But we're going to be using our calculator in the examples. See you in that video.